Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I believe this is the first live briefing of the new year, so a belated Happy New Year. And I hope everybody has survived the storms, such as they are, and are in a safe place. We've got a number of colleagues from the cabinet joining us today, including Provost Peter Nwosu, Vice President Rene Rotolo, and our Executive Director for HR. And a person whose portfolio runs many, many commas beyond that, Ewing-Morgan. And they're here to do also pieces of presentation, but they're also here to assist me with the Q&A. I'm gonna infer, just because of the calendar, that what may be at top of people's mind is the spring semester and where we're at with 70-30. And of course, 70-30 means a couple of things. One, it's our instructional goal. So 70% of our classes being face-to-face, and 30% either remote or hybrid. At this point, we are on track for that, and we will begin instruction a week from tomorrow. We do potentially have a little bit of wiggle room, but I'll let the provost discuss that in his remarks. And we do know that there are several areas where we're going to need the support of our staff over the next week to make sure that we're prepared to meet those students and support those students and faculty in those early weeks of instruction back on campus. I do want to underscore that the 70-30 for instruction also translates to a potential, well, to a real 70-30 of work for our staff coming back. That will not commence until the end of February. However, as per system guidelines going back several months now, we're all supposed to be back 50% or more already. And so we're going to need the hands that are on deck next week to make sure that we are prepared as best as we can to support our students, support the instruction, and support our students and staff who are on campus outside of the classroom. As I pointed out, the Chancellor amended the 70-30 return to work plan for staff until the end of February. That is, like so many things these days, subject to change, but that is the plan at present. Folks will need to start working through their return to work plans and their remote plans, the remote work agreements, to reflect that they'll be at 70%. We are not asking people to amend their current documents, but again, a reminder, there is already an expectation that folks are on campus 50% of the time. In addition to the 70-30 goals and the opening of the spring semester, there are a couple of things that are likely going to happen on campus. One is we should, unless staffing prevents it, we should see an expansion of testing on campus. So all the presidents have requested additional testing capacity on our campuses to support our students and our staff. The system has said they will do their best. They've also countered by saying that they will increase the pools of random testing from 10% to 20%. So please, if you get an email saying that you've been selected for random testing, please adhere to what that email is suggesting and directing you to do. It is imperative that we track those numbers, because those percentages of positive tests are important to the decisions that the central office is making for the system, but potentially for each campus. So as you get those emails, please don't ignore them. At the same time, a number of presidents have asked the central office to consider either extending or expanding vaccination capacity on our campuses. And that may be a little bit more of a challenge, I understand, but I believe the chancellor heard us, and they are doing their best. But we did note that if we're going to continue to encourage people to get fully vaccinated and or boosted over the course of the spring semester, it may be helpful to our campus community, and it certainly could help the community around the campus to have vaccination sites adjacent to or on our campuses. So undoubtedly, we will hear more about both of those things as the weeks move forward, and as things get clarified with CUNY Central. The other thing I'd like to underscore is, as we'll hear from our colleagues, Uh, People who are coming back to campus who have not been on campus regularly over the last months will come to a campus where there have been people who have been on campus regularly. In fact, there are lots of people who've been on campus full time for the last 9 months or more. And most of those people have been working in service areas that are designed to keep our campus safe and to assess where we need to build capacity or enhance our safety. And so please understand that the campus has been alive, if not vibrant, with employees and students on our campus, and that a lot of our coworkers have been working diligently to acquire the necessary devices and tools and resources we need. They've also been working on renovation projects, and they certainly have been working with specific offices and buildings to make sure that we can be as safe as we can as we come back. I'm going to throw it over to the provost now for his academic update, and I'm sure we'll pick up some things in the question and answer period. So Provost Nwosu, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, President Delgado. Good afternoon, everyone, and Happy New Year. This is our first meeting of the year. I do want to take a few minutes to provide some update on where we are with our spring enrollment data. As some of you probably know, we did set a target actually of 13,480 students. Part of our thinking at the time we developed this target was really the challenges with COVID. And in fact, that target that we set was 5% lower than the target we had from last spring 2021. Our final enrollment number for spring 2021 was 14,199 at the end of the census period. Where we are as of today, this morning, the data that was also shared with Provost and Dean's Council, this shows some very good promise in terms of enrollment numbers for spring 2022. As of last year, at the same time, we had 11,843 students enrolled. But as of today, we had 11,656 students. So it's not too far from where we were last spring, 187 students different. And so that is quite good progress, considering the very fact, as you know, that we started enrollment almost a month later than we normally would have started last year. Part of it because of the 70 by 30 discussions the president has mentioned. Part of it also because we were moving to a new tool, Course Dog, that helps us in terms of scheduling. And so there were technical glitches with that system, but we managed to address them and then moved on with registration several weeks later. And so the very fact that we've caught up, it's really very good news just 8-9 days before the start of the new semester. There are a number of areas that we're paying attention in terms of last week headcount to get us to that target we set. We were at 77%, and of course 78% in terms of FTE. And when we compared ourselves to the rest of the other senior colleges, we ranked 5th in the entire system. But this week we're at 86% in terms of headcount. We're making good progress. And then 88% in terms of FTE. That's also very good progress. And we moved from the 5th position in terms of our ranking with the other senior colleges to 4th in the system. We are less than 1%. In terms of meeting where we are as of last year compared to today. So that's very, very good news. I do want to thank our folks in enrollment management, certainly our deans and department chairs and the faculty who have worked very closely with our students to get us closer to where we are in preparation for spring. The president mentioned the 70 by 30 CUNY framework that is really guided our planning for spring. We did get to 70% as a college in terms of in-person enrollment. And I will share with you that as of the number of students who have actually registered for courses, so in terms of registrations we have had thus far, with a 70 by 30 modality, there are more than 14,000 registrations for in-person as of this morning. We did have 12,800 plus registrations for courses for online, and another 2,400 plus for hybrid. So that's again indicative of the choices our students are making in preparation for the semester, and that's some good news there. There's some detail that I have provided in the Provost monthly report that will go out today or tomorrow, and I encourage you to look at that report when you have it. At yesterday's Academic Council meeting of Chief Academic Officers, just referencing the point the President made a moment earlier, they have given us some wiggle room where there is a need for online courses. We have the permission to add those on a case-by-case basis where there's demand there. I have discussed this with VP Sarmiento and certainly with our deans. And as they make those determinations, we will consider them and move in that direction without really upsetting the schedule we have. The students have already registered. And so we're looking at these on a case-by-case basis. Where there's course demand, we will make adjustment because CUNY has given us that small window to make those adjustments as necessary. The other final point, Mr. President, that I would speak to is just something that came out also at yesterday's Academic Council meeting in terms of the vaccination mandate from the central office, but certainly from the governor. As you recall, the governor did announce sometime in mid-December a booster mandate for students to begin January 15th for all students. Part of the discussion yesterday at that meeting was how do we roll this out, given the very fact that students are just being notified. And so what CUNY has indicated to us is to not withdraw students for failure to comply with this mandate at this point, but they're also coming up with a guideline on how to implement the mandate. And that guideline, they'll be sending us some information, and they will also be sending information to students. But the expectation is that the deadline students will be given, depending on when they have received the prior two vaccinations, will be somewhere between March 1st and March 15th. And they will provide clearer details in that notification that will go out to students. Certainly, this is for only spring semester, and they'll provide another update right after January 28th when we open for spring semester. But also in that meeting yesterday, the administration, central administration, did also inform us that for summer and fall semesters, there would be a requirement for that booster mandate, and students will not be allowed to register for classes for those two terms. So I wanted to share that as well with our community as we continue our planning for spring. Back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Provost. Rene, before I turn it over to you, I'm going to turn back to Vice President Ewing-Morgan. Don, please pick up anything that I may have misspoken in terms of our return to work. But I think importantly, since we have everybody's attention here at the top, if you could let us know where we're at with the campus climate survey process. And you're on mute.
Again, I'm sure because they take it off. Thank you, President Delgado. It's a pleasure to join you and my colleagues here today, especially to talk about this climate study. And it's the right time to talk about it because in the next few weeks, there'll be an opportunity for all members of the campus community to have their voice heard as a part of the study. So what I would just like to do first is to put the climate study in context, and then I'll talk about this exciting upcoming opportunity. So since September of last year, a 22-member task force comprised of students, faculty, and staff representing all occupational groups, different members of the campus community. We've been working with a consultant from Rankin and Associates to develop on this campus-wide climate study initiative. A climate study measures an institution's real and perceived environment. For example, how people experience the environment, how they interact on a personal level, how they interact professionally, how they interact academically. It gives us the opportunity to gauge our strengths and weaknesses around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it also provides information about what the environment is for learning, living, and working, and how we can implement strategies to improve that environment. I mentioned the name Rankin and Associates. This is an organization, a firm that has conducted more than 200 campus climate studies over the past 20 years. They are highly regarded in the higher education community, and they just have a wealth of expertise. We've been meeting with our liaison, Dr. Genevieve Weber, for about 6 hours each month since September. The reason for this climate study has its genesis in two areas. One, many of you recall that about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, a lot of time was spent to develop a strategic plan for the college. One of the strategies in that strategic plan recommended that we conduct a climate study to do, as the climate is supposed to do, to gauge the environment for living, working, and studying. Out of that strategic plan, there was a smaller ad hoc work group that was established to look at a number of things relating to environment issues and in academic issues, and what we could do differently, do better. This group also recommended that we engage an outside consultant to do a research-based climate study. So there was a lot of commitment from senior leadership and all across the campus community to do so. And that's how we then began sourcing firms to assist us with this, and that is how Rankin Associates was selected. So there are a number, this is going to be about a year-long activity. The fall semester we spent working with the consultant to design the campus study, which will be begin with a survey. We customize questions, make sure they're appropriate for all members of the community, full, part-time faculty and staff, students, graduate assistants. We've got adjuncts. We want to learn about the experiences everyone is having on this campus. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to start a campaign, probably beginning early February, where we will provide you information about the survey that will be administered in March and April of this semester. And we have selected the theme, Your Voice is Our Strength, specifically because that communicates the importance of this study to us and how we want to hear from each and every one of you. Because it's by you contributing to the study that we can make sure that we fulfill our mission and that we do what we can to make this your home of choice, a place where you want to come every single day. So that survey will be March through April, the opening date. It's not on our platform, it's on the consultant's platform. It's a confidential survey. No one will be identified by name or any other factors, and all data will be reported in the aggregate. Those individuals who may need some assistance, don't have access to a computer on a regular basis, can go to the Open Center to complete it. And we will also have paper and pencil versions of the survey if someone requests it. It will be accessible, so our members of the community who have visual, hearing, or other impairments can participate in it. And it fully meets all other accessibility standards. It's also been approved by Lehman's Institutional Research Board. So after the survey closes in April, the next step is for Rankin and Associate to analyze the data and prepare a report. And that report will be shared come the fall semester. And that is also the second opportunity for the campus community to participate, because there will be forums where you will be invited to come to get some feedback on the findings and give us some ideas and strategies that you would like for us to consider to build on the things that we are doing well and to make improvements in those areas where we can do better. So this is, like I said, a campus-wide initiative and a year-long one. And I hope that you will participate. I want to say a couple of things, thank a couple of people. Nicole Saunders in Media Relations has prepared a wonderful microsite for this initiative, which will be up soon, and it will be updated on a regular basis for you to learn where we are, what we're doing. And you'll also see the names of the co-chairs. There are three, myself, there's Bartholomew Bland, who's the director of Lehman College Art Gallery, and Dr. Rosa Rivera-McCutcheon from the School of Education, the Counseling and Leadership Program. We are the three co-chairs, and they're the names of the 22 individuals who are on the task force will be on that website. And I think right now that's about all I have to share, but I look forward to coming back to talk to you again, probably when we are in the midst of the survey, to give you some feedback as to where we are and how it's going. Thank you, President Delgado.
Thank you, Vice President Ewing-Morgan. I just want to underscore, having been at 3 institutions where we have done the campus climate survey, particularly the one conducted by Rankin Associates, we are only going to get the best data we can and the clearest assessment of where we're at when people participate. So as you get the emails directing you to participate in the survey, I really strongly encourage you to take the time. It does not take that much time to complete the survey. And it's absolutely critical that we get representation from all quarters and sectors of the campus in order for us to have the chance to have the best analysis of where we're at, and frankly, where we have opportunity gaps to be even better. I want to underscore what the Vice President said. We can only be as strong as we understand ourselves to be. And what we're aiming for is to be a campus where everybody feels like they are a part legitimately, equally, equitably, a part of the Lehman community. So as you get the information, please pay attention to it. And certainly when you get the invitation to complete the survey, don't hesitate to do it. We really need your participation. I'm going to turn it over now to Vice President Rotolo, who has some updates on facilities and I suspect on equipment as well. Vice President Rotolo.
Thank you, President Delgado. Good afternoon, Lehman College, and a belated Happy New Year to everyone. It's great to be back with you all. First, I want to let everyone know about, because I know something that's on everybody's mind is about the building's ventilation systems. And before I give you an update on where we're at those buildings where we're doing renovations, I just want to let you know that we are following ASHRAE, which is the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers standards for buildings. They sent the standards for the industry and what they've recommended for ventilation, filtration, and air cleaning in spaces as preventative measures for fighting infections. So we've opened up the outside air dampers to maximum to allow maximum outside air in. So you want to get as much fresh air in as possible. We've installed MERV 13 filters in all the units. and all the equipment. And we've also been distributing HEPA air filtration systems to spaces. So far, we've distributed just about 300. We have more on order that's expected to come in tomorrow, this week, and we have more that we'll be ordering so that we can fulfill all the needs throughout the campus. And we also have spent a lot of time verifying that all of our systems are fully functioning and functioning as designed. All of these things are critical to good ventilation systems in buildings. Gillette Hall, the toilet exhaust system is fully functioning, has been since last semester. The building ventilation system, which is a natural ventilation system for the building, is fully functional. The exhaust system for the Gillette Auditorium has been installed. There is some ductwork that's being fabricated, will be delivered and installed next week. And the ventilation system for the Gillette Auditorium will be fully functional also for the beginning of class. There's another component of that that we'll be adding at a later date because the equipment has a longer lead time, and that's the makeup air system. So that'll be a few weeks out, but the space will be cleared once the ventilation for occupancy, once the ventilation system is fully functional. Davis Hall toilet exhaust is installed and should be completely fully functional by next week. And the Davis building ventilation system is in process. I don't have a completion date yet, but the majority of spaces in Davis Hall have independent ventilation systems from the building ventilation system. But when I have more info on that, I will provide it. I just want to remind everyone about some things necessary for coming on campus, since for many people, it's been a while since you've been on campus. Masks are mandatory. You are required to wear masks at all time on campus. You will need to have either your physical ID card or your digital ID card to enter campus. We've implemented an access control system. That access control system is tied with CUNY First. So your vaccination records must be uploaded to CUNY First. That will give you a green light to access the campus. So if you have not gotten either your physical ID or your digital ID, I ask that you prepare by doing that now ahead of coming to campus. If the president mentioned expanding random testing, I just want you to be aware that if you are selected for random testing, you have 7 days to get tested. You can get tested at any CUNY testing site. It doesn't have to be at Lehman, but you must get tested within that 7 days. I also ask that you do not use the tunnels for accessing buildings on campus. I realize that we're in that time period where there's inclement weather, but we really shouldn't be occupying the campus, the tunnels, and we want to make sure that it's available for buildings and grounds, the mailroom, and public safety for use for their access through the campus. And then I also want to ask you all a personal favor. I want to ask you to please, when you return, be patient and be kind. It's been over 18 months since we've had a large number of people on campus, and it's going to take us a little while to get used to everyone being there. So we may be a little slower than normal getting things to you. And as always, if you feel like you're not getting a response, please feel free to email me. I'll respond, I'll get back to you, and I'll make sure that we take care of whatever your issues or concerns are. And that's what I have. So I'm going to return it back to you, Dr. Delgado. Thank you.
Thank you, Rene. A little glitch in getting my mute and my unmute unstuck. I want to underscore the need for a little grace, a little compassion, and a little care for each other as we come back. A lot of us have been, in my case, locked away for most of the last year. And we very much love getting out of the office. For those poor souls who are in Schuster, when I show up, I'm really sorry that I get chatty. I just haven't been around people as often as I'm normal, and I just sort of get a little too social and maybe distract people from their work, and I'll try to be better at that. But it is still a stressful time, and there's still a lot of uncertainty, and we all know that. And even in the midst of that, we've got faculty, staff, and students working and learning and teaching and researching and creating on campus. And just please understand that everybody is doing the best they can to cope with the circumstances that they're coping with. I'm saying that to also make a transition to where we're at as an institution as well. So we're really in a space now where we're in the budget cycle. And so we have a set of priorities that were established back in November by the board. Those conversations with legislators have been ongoing from the central office. The Bronx delegation hosted a breakfast. It ended up being more like a Zoom lunch last week. I'm in DC right now physically. I'm here for a conference, but I've spent today up on the Hill in the offices talking to some of our federal delegates, some of whom were at the luncheon last week to follow up on some of the issues that may be more related to federal priorities than they are state or local priorities. But amongst the priorities, things like mental health, support for the students with disabilities, academic advising or academic mentoring and coaching. These are all priorities that we've put in front of state, local, and federal legislators to see if we can get additional funding as Lehman, not necessarily just as CUNY. And so we've identified priorities through our conversations with legislators, and we've distilled them based on the priorities of the system, so that we're not running counter to what the system is saying are important things to invest in, but we're also putting a particularly Lehman spin because we feel we have very particular or specific needs that are above and beyond what the system is talking about. And we've really focused on the venerable issues of providing access and opportunity to our students and then supporting our students. So today, when I spoke to Representative Bowman, one of the things we want to talk about, for example, was the IT infrastructure issues in the Bronx and how the 20 months that we've been now in COVID have really showed us how that technology gap is really differentially felt amongst people, and perhaps differentially felt in the Bronx than, say, one of the other boroughs. And everybody is attentive to it, but it's obviously, if it was an easy infrastructure fix, we would have already fixed it. The irony is, of course, my meeting with Representative Bowman and my meetings with Representative Espiat were impacted by votes that were occurring in the state capitol that were pursuant to things like voting rights and the infrastructure bills. And so we are still sort of pecking away at those at the federal level. The provost and I have been in conversations about some priorities we would have academically, and we think in one or more of the infrastructure bills that there will be money that is designated to Hispanic serving or minority serving institutions. That was confirmed again today. But again, those monies which could flow to us indirectly and fund multi-year initiatives, those are being held up in the votes that are occurring, and it's the challenge in the Senate rather than the House. I think at the state level, we feel pretty good about where we're at. Revenue seems to be positive. There seems to be a lot of goodwill towards CUNY. You know, for want of a better analogy, we're not in the state or local press for negative things right now, and so it's a good time for us to go forward. And I think the attention on New York City through the pandemic and the challenges faced by citizens in New York City really cast a strong light on the things and services that we provide through our city university campuses to students, the knock-on effect they have on families. So for example, when we provision a student with a Chromebook and a MiFi so that they can access their class, that MiFi is designed to serve that student. But when that MiFi is put on a kitchen table in an apartment, it may be helping that student's sibling. It may be helping that student's parents. It may be helping that student's children in what they need to get done as well. And people understand the role that CUNY has played, and certainly that we've played in the Bronx, not just us, but obviously Hostos and BCC. So it feels like we're in a pretty good spot. The question will be, as the priorities sift through and the political sausage making grinds its way, how much of our request remains. Certainly the Bronx delegation seems very unified in wanting to find ways to invest in CUNY and in particular in the 3 CUNY institutions in the Bronx. So there's still a lot of optimism, but the next 2 months will be a lot of conversation, a lot of pressing our case, and a lot of reinforcing the data about who our students are, what kind of impact our institutions have, and what kinds of outcomes do our students realize by their contact with our faculty and staff on our campuses. And I think we're in a pretty positive place at Lehman. The other thing that's still sort of out there is there are a few habits we've developed as a system to manage the crisis that is COVID, maybe one of the longest crises in higher education memory. Usually a crisis is a week or two. This has been 2 years. And a lot of us, I suspect, my vice president colleagues most especially, are hoping that our reaction as a system to the pandemic doesn't create new processes, but rather we recognize that we had to adapt some processes to survive. And please understand that every president in the system, including myself, we are pushing to get back our control and responsibility for handling, if you will, our own business. We had to cede some decision-making to the central office. It is slowly coming back. It may be fair to say it's coming back too fast for the comfort of some people in the central office. I think it is entirely fair to say it's not coming back fast enough so that we on the campuses feel comfortable with our ability to make decisions. But those conversations with the central office and the chancellor are ongoing. And we're hopeful that as we return to campus, the case can be made and understood that we really do need, as we're moving back towards some sense of normalcy, we really do need the opportunity to manage things that well, prior to March of 2 years ago, were ours to manage. They were our responsibility. So hopefully we get there. I will suspend my comments there, and then we will start to sort of sift through the questions that are outstanding. I'm going to try to take them from the top. First question is, with COVID cases increasing at such a high rate, will there be a switch? So the decision to switch to modalities will be managed by the central office. They will continue to monitor not just citywide or borough-wide data, but they will also be assessing campus-wide data, which is why that random testing is so important. And so as necessary, they will authorize either return to remote learning for the entire system, or depending on what institutional data or borough data say, they may dictate to one or more institutions in a particular borough that for a period of time or for the rest of the semester, whatever the parameters they feel comfortable with, that we will go to remote learning. We will not have that independent authority on our campus. That kind of blanket statement of moving fully online or fully face-to-face, that will be directed out of the central office, out of the chancellor's office. I'm not sure what the question is about how is the in-person broken down in terms of modality. In-person means fully face-to-face. Hybrid as a modality is counted as part of the 30% online. And so the way that things were set up for planning for the semester from the central office, you had fully face-to-face, and then you had over in this other category, hybrid, online, and if you will, other. Let's see, question from Penny about drop notices. It is a challenge. The way we handle things in the fall, Penny, is if students indicated that they were sort of approaching the deadline, but they'd gotten their first vaccine, were waiting for the second one, they could appeal. I think there is still a little bit of that space, but clearly they've been ratcheting down from the central office those provisions, and they really are expecting folks to be fully face-to-face. Please understand, if you're a student and you're not fully vaccinated, yes, you do run the risk of being pulled out of your face-to-face classes, but you still have an opportunity to take any online classes that you've been registered for. Will faculty have a booster mandate? Professor Zach, at this point, all we know about is the fully vaccinated mandate for faculty. There's been no discussion for faculty or staff about a booster mandate. The only conversations that have occurred are a full vaccination mandate for faculty and a full vaccination mandate for staff. And that conversation with staff is ongoing. And I think that answers Ms. Soto's questions as well. Ruth, I understand your comment, but as I just said, whatever we feel about a recommendation for the first 2 weeks of the semester, those are decisions that will be made out of CUNY Central. They are not given, we are not given authority to make that call. And this is where my ignorance pops up. So if one of my colleagues can remind me, what is a CLT?
College lab technician. They work, they
there's-
work in the teaching labs and they'll work in the research labs. They set up the teaching labs.
And I believe then, Don, they are considered staff, are they not, in terms of the classification system?
The non-teaching staff, yes.
Yeah. So they would fall under the staff mandate, not the teaching mandate.
That's correct.
Okay. Penny, I don't know at this point if we can waive late fees. We can certainly inquire. I believe those things are set up automatically, and sometimes they can be difficult to undo. That is one thing we can inquire. And Desiree, I appreciate the phrase exuberant student body. Would that every student body be exuberant? That's not always the case. So I'm happy that we have an exuberant student body. We continue to have conversations with academic affairs and the student affairs division therein about how to support disability services. There's been ongoing conversations about mental health. There are ongoing conversations at the system level about mental health and trying to direct more resources in that way. I have now discovered, talking to people who don't work in higher ed, this is an issue everywhere. And at a meeting I was at yesterday afternoon here in DC, we had some colleagues from New Jersey who were concerned that now it's getting difficult for them to find appropriate mental health professionals that can work in our context because they're being sucked up by other nonprofit, governmental, and even for-profit entities who have, frankly, who have employees or constituencies that are struggling. But yes, we are doing the best that we can to secure more resources. I think, Doreen, I think it's prudent that if you have proof of the booster shot, you should go into CUNY One and upload it. Particularly if, as we move forward, there's some sort of mandate around a booster. Rene, you were going to say something?
Yeah, but I think we have to wait till CUNY says that CUNY First is ready to receive the booster. Am I right, Dawn?
That's correct.
Because I know they were making adjustments, but I don't think they've announced yet that it's ready to start accepting it.
Then I
That's how I
apologize.
understand it, yes.
I apologize for speaking out of turn. I thought they were ready. My bad. Thanks for the clarification. Karen, that's an interesting question. What are we doing to make them feel welcome? Typically when you kick off a school year, you have an event and you do welcome them. And yet we're still in this space where we're welcoming to campus, but we're trying to de-densify populations so that we're not on top of each other and create a super spreader event. So I'm going to have to give that some thought about how we welcome them back to campus. Because where I normally go to, my colleagues would probably say, President, that's not a good idea. Let's not do that. So maybe we can find a better idea that is practical. And from Dina to Alessandro, I think we're doing the best that we can to line up folks who are prepared to teach in high flex mode with classrooms that are equipped for high flex. It may not be perfect, it may not be 100% because we're still building out classroom capacity, but I think we've tried to match the instructor and the skill set to the classroom. What is the percentage modality during the summer? We have not been given directions on that yet. That's probably a call that will be made somewhere in, I would hope by the middle of April, that we would be getting some directions from the central office. They probably won't go out that early. Yes, Peter.
President, we did have discussions this morning at PDC. And so the guidance I gave, mindful that we will get further guidelines from Central is to operate as we're operating in spring. Things might change because we've already started discussions on planning for both summer and fall semesters as well.
Oh,
and
that's
so
good.
the timelines were provided today by the registrar. And so based on those timelines, we thought we could at least have a framework. And that framework was to use what we use this semester. And then once we have any adjustments we need to make based on guidelines from the central office, we will adjust accordingly. But at least we need to have a starting point.
Thank you. And that's a lot. I guess that's a logical place for them to begin. Yeah. And then in terms of the minimum number of students registered for the course during the semester, we've agreed we're going to try to be somewhat more liberal than we might normally be. Obviously, if it's an elective course and you've got 1 or 2 students registered for the class, it doesn't make sense to run the class. But particularly for courses that are serving as foundational or gateway courses or capstone courses, or they are required courses, we're going to try to be as liberal as we can and not upset the curricular schedule, both for students and for faculty in the spring semester. And Audrey, yes, those of us who are fully vaxxed and boosted may still be picked randomly. Absolutely. The process of randomization does not look at anything other than the pool of employees and students that you have. Dana, there is not yet a comprehensive vaccination mandate for staff. The central office position, the board of trustees position is still to encourage everybody to be fully vaccinated, and those of us who are fully vaccinated to consider getting a booster, but we have not gotten to the place where we have a staff mandate. Paula, probably an email. And if you're going to email the central office about starting and ending in the same mode, if you're going to send that to the vice chancellery at central office, you might want to copy one of us just in case we need to follow up with them as well. But as I said, blanket statements about modality, those will be dictated. Look, if we have a situation where an entire class has to isolate or the instructor has to isolate, yes, those are things that we handle. But that sort of blanket sort of rule for across the campus, as they say, that is currently above our pay grade. There continue, Rene, this may be a question for you. If a professor is teaching on campus and comes into contact with a person who has tested positive for COVID, are there protocols in place?
Yes, yeah, HR manages that, but they would need to isolate if they have symptoms. They need to get tested and have a negative test to come back. And of course, they have to notify student affairs about the student. Well, actually, the student should notify student affairs. They have to notify student affairs about the student, and then the student affairs will do contact tracing within the classroom itself.
And let me clarify that the coming back to campus and the testing, that testing has to be done at a CUNY site.
Has to be done at a CUNY site, CUNY testing location.
And the quarantine, are we doing, I can't remember, are we doing 5 days or are we still at where we were last fall?
It depends on your vaccination status. I don't recall. I can look it up and I'll get back to, who's that from?
Well, hang on a second, I can go back.
I recall that it's by 5 days you get tested. If you're negative, you can come back with the negative result. But if you're positive, then you have to isolate for, I believe, 10 days.
Yeah. And the one thing that we were told last week during the council president's meeting is that the CUNY websites regarding COVID, they were cleaning them up and updating them with the newest directives, either from the state or from the CDC, as well as their own policies. So to anybody who's confused, they should be cleaned by now. It's been a week. And you might want to bookmark that page so you can periodically refer to it. But they kind of went through all of the sort of edits and changes, and that should be cleaned up by now.
And we're just to add to that, we're doing the same to our website. We've updated with the CUNY guidelines, and we are now going through the process through the Return to Campus Committee to update all of the subcommittee sections as well. So that should be done within another week.
Yeah. And in terms of the students who do get COVID and have to isolate and or quarantine, we will treat those students as sick students, and we make adjustments for them when we're not in COVID. So to Badani's question, professors would be asked to make adjustments for students who have to miss an exam or miss a class period or an assignment because they are ill. This is the more complicated science question. The question of random testing and PCR results, those are being collected centrally. They are being reported back to the campuses as part of that sort of automatic reporting. There is communication going back to either the student or the staff member, the faculty who has a positive result, and then they are being given directions as to what to do next.
Can I just add to that also that CUNY does have a dashboard on their website where you can monitor, they update it weekly, and you can monitor both the positive tests for the prior week as well as the ongoing numbers of positive tests for each of the campuses.
Yep.
And I'd like to add some additional information too, that if a student or an employee reports a positive test and they have been on campus, contact tracing is initiated once they report it. So HR would do the contact tracing if an employee reports positive. Student Affairs does it if a student reports it.
Thank you. I don't know, Deidre, if they're taking into consideration what your time is on campus. They're just looking at pools of people and then identifying who gets random. In the email, they will tell you the parameters. So you have been selected for the next pool of random. Please come to a CUNY site by such and such time. And then they have the follow-on directions if it's a positive or negative. And to Mr. Rivera, I do believe that with these PCR tests, at least the CUNY ones, we do have a 24-hour turnaround. So yes, if you were to do it tomorrow.
It's within 48 hours.
Okay.
It's within 48 hours. Yeah.
You should be okay. Dana, we do not have an official N95 mandate yet. And I don't know that we're going to get one. Part of me believes if numbers continue to be complicated, then we may see something like that or some other directive in terms of how we mask. Just understand that now in the spaces that we're inhabiting, because we still have a population on our campus, in this case staff, who don't have a mandate to be vaccinated, we have to treat sort of shared areas as mixed area, as potentially mixed areas. So we have to assume that not everybody in a space is fully vaccinated. And that's one of the reasons for one of several reasons for the mask mandate. And the other thing, the advice to keep some social distancing. Now, Dawn, if I get this wrong, correct me, but 8 HEOs are considered staff, are they not?
Yes, that's correct. Yes, that's correct.
And Ms. Sanders, yes, the class could go online. I'm saying could because if the person tests positive and is deeply symptomatic, that person may be too sick to even conduct the class online. But yes, otherwise they would go online. All right, the questions are flipping fast in front of me. And I cannot offer insight as to why we don't have a comprehensive mandate. It is caught up in the complexities of laws and collective bargaining agreements. And we have multiple collective bargaining agreements that cover and regulate the relationship between CUNY and staff members. And I suspect that the conversations that CUNY is having about a staff mandate are in fact conversations that they're having with negotiators and leaders from those various collective bargaining units.
And Mr. President, that question came up yesterday to an academic council, and the response you provided was what was provided. So that's collective bargaining units conversations are going on.
Yep. And it may be that those questions get resolved before the staff come back at that higher rate, at the 70% rate. I don't really have an expectation or an insight as to when those conversations will be completed, or conversely, when they will cease and folks will just continue to work as they've been working. That is yet to be determined by the central leadership. So this is an interesting question. If a student who has tested positive show that they swiped into the library or computer lab, will student affairs also do contact tracing for those visitors who have swiped into the library? I'm not entirely sure, because.
So what student affairs normally does is they'll ask the student who else they were in contact with on campus.
Mhm.
And then they will contact those persons.
Mhm.
So in a class, it's obviously easy because they'll get the class roster for the classroom, but in other situations, because students do go other places besides the classroom, they will ask them who else they were in contact with and where.
Mhm. Thank you. Ruth Wangren's question about can we have a more prominent place for contact person and numbers for reporting positive tests? Yeah, Ruth, we'll take a look at our site and see if we can play with the font or the highlighting to see if we can do that. And I do believe RF employees are subject to the same self-reporting procedures. I know that there are some glitches in terms of how they show up sometimes. At least that's been reported by members of the Research Foundation, but there is an expectation that they will be treated the same way that all City University employees are. And I think that is it for questions. Wonderful timing. And I will take no credit for it. I want to thank my three colleagues from the cabinet, Provost Nwosu, Vice President Rotolo, and Vice President Ewing-Morgan, because without their able assistance and succinctness, we would not have answered the questions with a minute and a half left. So I appreciate the questions. We know we all have lots of questions, and some of us have preferences for the answers we want to hear. And I apologize if we were not able to meet that goal for you today. It is a difficult needle to thread. But as we said earlier, everybody is doing their best, because for most of us, we want to be back to where we were as a sort of face-to-face campus. And of course, we want to be safe for ourselves and our friends and colleagues and loved ones. So with that, we will close up shop for today. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you to my colleagues for their insights, their knowledge, and their expertise. And I hope Friday goes well and your weekends go even better. Thank you.
Bye.